Welcome to Coach's Corner podcast by Well at Humana, where we talk all things health and fitness with an authentic, informative, and real-world lens. This year, we're personalizing the podcast a bit more with the people behind it. Each month, we'll introduce you to a new Exos fitness coach on our team, where we'll dive into their personal stories through fitness, specialties, passions, and more. Welcome to Coach's Corner podcast. We're excited to welcome Coach Andrew Amburgey to the podcast this month, diving a little bit deeper into his journey to fitness and what he enjoys doing outside of work. Welcome, Andrew.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
We're going to share a little bit of background, if that's all right, before we get into it. Andrew is our performance manager for Well at Humana. He oversees all the programming, personal training, and coaching services at our flagship site. And he received a Bachelor of Science in Exercise Science from Lee University. Where is that?
It's in Tennessee, Cleveland, Tennessee.
Okay. He's a certified strength and conditioning specialist, USA weightlifting coach, and performance exercise specialist. That's a mouthful. Sure. When not at work, he's hanging out with his wife, hiking, and his dog, Lainey. Welcome, Andrew.
Thank you. Thank you.
Amy's going to kick us off the only way we know how with our rapid fire questions. Here we go, y'all.
Indeed. All right, I'm just going to ask you some short little questions. You're just going to answer them first thing that pops into your head. Don't overthink it. We're going to get to know you. These are fun. You're going to have fun.
All right, let's hit it.
All right, here we go. Favorite exercise?
Deadlift.
Do you prefer breakfast, lunch, or dinner?
Breakfast.
Ooh. Sweet or salty?
Sweet.
Favorite snack?
Ice cream.
What was the last place you traveled?
Chicago.
Nice.
What's your preferred way to relax?
TV on the couch.
What show?
Oh.
What are you binging right now?
Or a movie.
Yeah, so many shows.
What are you turning on right now? You go home, turn on the TV. What is it?
Probably MasterChef.
Okay.
Oh, not what I was expecting.
What's your favorite animal?
Dog.
What's your coffee order?
Plain black iced coffee.
Interesting. Americano or just
No,
coffee?
cold brew preferred.
Cold brew. Okay, we got a cold brew guy. Mountains or beach?
Beach.
Morning person or night owl?
Both.
One daily practice you swear by?
You gotta eat breakfast. Obviously,
Yeah.
it's a breakfast.
Most important meal.
Do you collect anything?
No.
Nothing?
Hats, maybe, if you ask my wife, but
We'll count it. We'll count it. And then what's something you're looking forward to?
Christmas. Love Christmas. We always go to California.
Oh, you know.
And so, yeah, it's always a fun time.
Nice.
Very cool.
All right, you passed. Answering questions about yourself.
Hopefully I got them all right.
I always check to see, like, when you do this salty or sweet one, if their, like, favorite snack is then aligned with it. You know, that would be funny.
Was it?
It was ice cream. Yeah. All right, Andrew. So the drill here is that we kind of talk about your fitness journey. We're changing things up. So we want to hear a little bit about how you got into fitness, whether that be coaching or just in fitness in general. Like, take us back to where it all started.
Yeah, it's a great question. With like exercise and fitness related to that sort of thing, I got my first weight set from my cousins for Christmas. I don't know, I must have been 6th grade, 7th grade. They're older, and so they'd lifted weights. I'd like lifted weights with them a little bit in the garage. But yeah, they got me my own set, and I did like the 4 exercises I knew for probably
Like
way
dumbbells?
too long. No, it was actually a barbell set.
Okay.
and a little 1-inch
nice.
bar that clicked together, and it was
Oh, nice.
the plastic filled with concrete weights, real old school.
Wow.
So that's what I started with.
Okay.
And so yeah, that got me into like just exercising in general.
Yeah.
But I'd always grown up playing sports. Played basketball, baseball, growing up most of my life. I raced dirt bikes for a little while, and so that was a little bit more on the extreme sports side, but that was a lot of fun. And so I've always been super active, played sports all the way through college. Played rugby in college, and which was a totally different animal compared to what I'd grown up playing, but it turned out to be pretty good.
Rugby's a pretty rough sport, right?
Yeah, it's pretty tough on the body.
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun, though. It's probably the most fun I've ever had playing a sport. Just controlled chaos, but a lot of fun.
I've never like watched or anything. I've only been starting to get a little bit more into it with that Ilona.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, from the Olympics.
Yeah. So was exercise science always on your radar, or did you go into college with a little like something else in mind?
Yeah, no, I didn't. This is not what I saw myself doing for a career. I originally went to school for to get a degree in business, and then my business professor freshman year was also the head rugby coach, and loved his class. He was a great professor. But then I started realizing like you could train and work with athletes like full time. I mean, strength and conditioning was a thing. Just wasn't super popular. It's been around for well, really, it started collegiate strength conditioning started somewhere around the 70s, so it's pretty young as a profession.
Oh wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Very cool.
So when did you want to make the switch?
It was sometime freshman year, probably second semester. I was like, you know what, I don't really love business classes. Yeah, and I originally switched to athletic training. Didn't fully understand the ins and outs of that. You're just in a athletic training room working with people who have twisted their ankle, tore their ACL, that sort of thing. And I was like, ooh, this is not really what I want to do. I want to work with a healthier population.
Get them before the injury sets in.
Yeah, try to limit
Prevent that injury.
limit it as much as we can.
So then we found exercise science at Lee University. From there, like, what was your first job out of college?
Yeah, so I worked and trained at the student rec center all throughout college.
Okay.
And then once I graduated, I actually moved to Charlotte, North Carolina, which is where my wife is from. And so I found an internship with a facility there, a private sector facility. Interned for 12 weeks. It was kind of brutal, but then they offered me a full-time job. And so that was my first job. I got to experience a lot of different athletes. It was, I got to work with some guys in the MLB, the NBA, the NFL, and so I got exposed to some pretty high-level athletes early on, which is really cool to see because you can really tell their movement quality and proficiencies on another level.
Do you find that harder to like coach when they move so well? It takes almost like a little bit better eye to catch, because at that point you're not teaching them how to move, it's more like correcting things.
Yeah, I mean, I've always heard and then begun to use the analogy. It's like, all right, if you put like LeBron James into my weight room, like what would I do? It's like, I don't really know. He's I'm not going to try to iron out like any crazy movement patterns on him. He's got this crazy longevity thing on his side, and so it's like if you see some of his Instagram workouts, it might not be like up to spec, so to speak, as far as like quality movement patterns, but he's obviously done very well. So it's like you got these super high level athletes who aren't very great in the weight room. You just got to be careful not to hurt them and keep them in shape.
Interesting. So that's the coaching side of Andrew. Obviously you like fitness a little bit to have pursued the career. Tell us a little bit, like after rugby, what happened?
Yeah, so I got a few injuries from rugby and spent some time in the athletic training room, which is where I didn't want to be. And so I learned a lot from those experiences, actually, and I think they've made me a lot better of a coach. I tore my ACL, rehabbed that, had back surgery. That wasn't super fun. So I've been through the ringer, and even a few years ago, tore my Achilles. And so I think all these experiences
How old are you, sir?
Yeah, I'm almost too old to be hurting myself like this anymore. But yeah, I think that, some of those early on experiences, like with my ACL, really showed me that I enjoyed training for sport versus the sport itself. Once I started accumulating all these injuries and aches and pains, I could be healthier and still athletic without banging myself all to pieces.
Yeah, I was the same way. I played basketball in high school. I always joked that I brought the GPA up. I wasn't the star by any means, but I loved the training aspect of it and like the weight room workouts more so than being on the court scoring. So I think that's interesting.
Yeah, there's definitely some camaraderie that you can be a part of.
Yeah.
I've always said that too. Like I love practices and I always hated games.
Yes,
like
same.
Everything. Like I was like, shoot, can we just like do this and like never actually have to have the stress of competition?
So your injuries, Andrew, like an Achilles tear is like a pretty serious injury. What were like some of your mindset strategies? What things were getting you through like that recovery? Because I think as someone who maybe makes exercise a habit, when we're injured, we could try to use that as an excuse of like, oh, well, I rolled my ankle, I can't get in the gym today. But that's usually not true. You could do upper body or something instead. So just curious, like, what kept you going during those injuries?
Or sometimes, too, it's hard if you're so used to that. When you get an injury, it's, like, almost mentally frustrating.
Oh, yeah.
To, like, I can't, what can I do? Like, just trying to do what you can.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's, I got photos from friends in college in the weight room doing upper body, like with the crutches laying by the bench when I tore my ACL. Yeah, same thing for the Achilles as well. It was just like, okay, like tore it, scheduled surgery as soon as I could. For me, that was the worst part, was the waiting to get it repaired. It just felt like I was in limbo. And so for me, that was the mental hurdle I had to overcome, was like, all right, let me get this repaired. Let me get it fixed so I can begin my journey of recovering and getting back to it. And so I was, looking forward to starting rehab and physical therapy. And yeah, for me, it was, I got to do something every day, because if I don't, then I'll look back and I'll realize like that took much longer than it should have to recover from it. And so I recovered pretty quickly from the Achilles. Working in a facility doesn't hurt. I've got access to a lot of the equipment you need on a daily basis. And so I had my little knee scooter. I was still coaching, had surgery on a Friday, was at work on Monday. For me, it's just don't stop. Keep your foot on the gas.
Yeah.
And that's always been my strategy when it comes to kind of overcoming those injuries. I think I learned that I did it unintentionally before COVID, but COVID really showed me that I've got to be doing something.
Yeah.
I don't sit still very well.
How do you find a balance between keeping moving and then also like recovering and listening to your body?
Yeah, I just had to lean on the physical therapists for their recommendations, and just while I'm pretty in tune and self-aware with my body, just letting them say, okay, here's the green light. You can push it a little bit more as long as you feel X, Y, or Z. Yeah, and it was, on some level, I've had, the 2 lower body injuries. Good excuse to hit upper body quite often, right?
Yeah.
And so you can get pretty, jacked upper body when you can't really squat or deadlift.
Yeah. How have you brought those lessons into your clients? I know you said you have a client now who's working through an Achilles injury. I'm sure that gives you a little bit more credibility having gone through it yourself.
Yeah, definitely. So I got a gentleman who has been with me about a year, and he came to me a few weeks post-op, and we got right to work. And so, that was one of those things where, I had just gone through that experience, and I was partially still, I don't think I was 100% released from any and all activity or to do any and all activity. And so, I was partially still going through my own rehab, and he got on board with me, and it was maybe 4 months post-op. He was in Colorado skiing.
That's insane.
And so we worked real hard, and he put in the work and showed up every day, and I just kind of guided him towards the right movements.
That's crazy.
Do you notice a big difference from training athletes versus training corporate fitness, general population?
Yeah, there's definitely differences. In college, you're mandated to show up to these weight room sessions, whether you want to be there or not. And so it's easy because you've got, young kids who are they realize this is going to make them better at their sport, or the ones who don't really care. And so that's kind of a interesting duality when you're in the weight room. But then you also have general pop clients like that. Some people are like, look, I'm really looking forward to getting in shape. I got a wedding, a vacation, or hey, I need to, get back to life. And then you got some folks who, will come in and train, and they're just, halfway in it. So it's a little different. But generally, I kind of look at everybody the same. We all have the same global movement patterns. We all lose, power, strength, and speed, as we age. And whether you're an athlete or not, you still got to be doing something for a higher quality of life.
I think that's a big point, is our general population, you do probably see a wider variety in ages, right? Whereas that collegiate is 18 to 22 or whatever it is. Why is it so important to continue exercising as you age?
Yeah, I mean, you lose muscle as you age, without a doubt. And so you really, the first thing to go is that power for a lot of folks. And you see people in their 50s, 60s, 70s just kind of doing like a lot of machines. And what I've noticed over the past few years is train them a little more like an athlete. I mean, we're not like putting them on the line and making them do, 40-yard sprints or anything like that. But we will do some running. We will do some higher intensity jumping or plyometrics as long as they can handle it. And a lot of times I don't even tell them like, hey, this is what we're doing. I'm like, hey, how does this feel? Can we try this?
Yeah.
And, a lot of times I use the example of if you step off the curb and you twist your ankle, like, can you come back from that? Or are you going to continue to go to the ground and maybe break your wrist or, that sort of thing, especially as you get older. And so like a lot of that plyometric and power type stuff is even more imperative as we get older. But that's usually the first thing people cut out.
I don't remember who, I feel like it was on the podcast. I don't know who was talking about it or where I was reading it, but it was like over the age of 30, like we sprint over the age of 30, like a very small percentage of the population like still thinks to like sprint and like do box jumps and stuff. I don't remember if it was an article or if Xavier was talking about it or what, but that like stuck with me. And so like every once in a while, if I'm like jogging, I'll be like, let's see if I can just still sprint. I'm 30. I got to do my sprint.
That's true
just
though.
To see if you can do it. Like I don't want to lose it.
Especially in women, right? Like as we get older, our endurance, our capacity like go up. So I don't know. My mom, for example, like I know her goal is like always to run like 5+ miles. It's never like, let's do some fartlek training and go every like 1 minute and then walk. Like that would be terrible to her.
Yeah, she needs to do some shorter bursts.
Okay, it says 95% of adults over 30 will never sprint the rest of their life.
What? Wow.
That's crazy.
Okay.
Yeah, only 5% of adults from the day they turn 30 until the day they die will ever sprint. And like after a kid, dog, departing training, whatever.
And that doesn't have to be sprinting, right, Andrew? Like that could be jumping on a box or I don't know, what's another power exercise?
I mean, there's so many different things you could do. You can do kind of burst intervals on like a bicycle or the rowing machine. You can you can be a little more cardio focused and still hit those higher intensities as long as that your intention is there.
But I think about that when I do intensity because I'm 30 and I'm like, I gotta keep doing my intensity.
I gotta be that 5%.
And I feel even more intense doing it the older I get too.
Okay. All right.
Like it.
Andrew, are there any like influential people in your life that kind of shaped your coaching career or got you on this path?
Yeah, I think, I grew up, like I said, playing basketball, and one of my coaches when I was real young, I must have been grade school, he was super influential. He was always words of affirmation, kind of praised me for my work ethic versus just like my skill. And so I think that became really ingrained early on was, okay, I'm a hard worker. I can push through and that sort of thing. And so I think I've always been tenacious from that aspect. Maybe not the most skilled, individual, but yeah, I was like, look, I'll just keep showing up and, somebody else won't. And then I'll be there and I'll continue to work hard. And so early on, I think I got a solid work ethic based on a few years being coached by that guy. And then, in more recent history, once I left my first job out of college, I found myself at a smaller studio in Charlotte, and the owner there was super awesome. He'd been doing it for 30+ years, learned a ton from him, learned a ton of philosophy, like training philosophy and that sort of thing. So yeah, he was super impactful. Still a great mentor to this day. I'll reach out to him when we text, pretty often. So I'll see him pretty much anytime I go back to Charlotte. I try to swing by his shop and kind of see what's new with him and see if I can pick up any other little pieces of knowledge from him.
I think that's crazy that when I asked like influential people, you went all the way back to like middle school basketball. Like sports are so, coaches in general they're so impactful.
I would say one of my most influential people was my high school cross country coach.
Yeah.
And like totally changed how I view like running and exercise and like made me want to be better and like
for sure.
It is wild.
Yeah, and they're sometimes coaches are volunteer. They don't get paid for this stuff, but they're making this huge impact that follows people into adulthood. I just think that's really awesome.
Yeah, unfortunately, you can have the opposite far too often where the coach kind of ruins somebody's work ethic or isn't that great of a coach.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any like success stories that pop in your mind as you think about like your coaching career that like made a big impact on you?
Yeah, I mean, I've got current clients and former clients that have really not been in a great shape physically or mentally.
Mm-hmm.
They come to me for, physical training, and we work out in the weight room and we just get in better shape. But I think the consistency of showing up for something that's uncomfortable and, it's going to be hard and you might not want to do it that day. And they keep showing up. That's one of the biggest things in my life with my physical training is just being consistent, even if I'm not going as hard as I want to.
Mm-hmm.
Just really trying to show up and be as consistent as possible. And so the folks that I've trained that have done that, doesn't matter where they were, before, it becomes so ingrained in them that's like, hey, I'm just going to show up every day. I'm going to get this work. Going to keep moving forward, and then you can look back and say, okay, I gave myself the best chance at making progress.
Do you have any healthy habits that you swear by?
For me, sleep consistency, again, going back to the consistency word there, but probably in the last 2 years, I've really tried to make that a huge priority, and I'm not perfect at it by any means, but every time I get an alert I wear a Whoop strap on my wrist, and every time I get an alert that says, oh, you've been consistent the last 4 out of 5 days, I'm like, okay, cool, I'm doing something right. And that it encourages me to go for it that night and the next night and every single night after that. For me, it's sleep consistency. That's a big one. Waking up at the same time isn't always as easy. I find it easier to have a consistent bedtime. So for me, it's just consistent sleep and wake times.
How do you balance your well-being journey while also helping others on theirs and being a coach? Like, do you find that it's hard to keep that fire to work out when you're working in the gym all day or working around it, or are you still excited to do your workout? How do you find that balance?
Yeah, I mean, no, I'm not always excited to go work out. That's for sure. I think being in the field, working with people every day in itself is kind of all right, I'm going to practice what I preach sort of thing. Right. And so like, that's a good motivator for myself. I want to show up for myself. That way I can show up for my clients. And so, yeah, I mean, it's tough to balance. I work 4-10s and do some training on my 5th day, and randomly sometimes on the weekends I'll meet up with some folks to get a workout in. But yeah, I've become much more of not really a weekend warrior, because I'll get maybe 2 in throughout the week. But trying to get 2 to 3 in on the weekend has definitely been where the intensity can go up for me.
Plot twist, we don't love working out even though we're professionals in the field.
I love working out.
I mean, I do too, but there are days.
Not all the time.
Yeah, there are days when you don't want to do it. Yeah. So
I will say this: I've got, including our own facility here.
Yeah.
I got 2 other gym memberships. And so it's nice to have other places you can go and get out of kind of your office, so to speak.
Yeah. I go through waves too. Like sometimes, like if I just know I cannot motivate sometimes I'm very motivated. I can go in the gym. I have my workout that I planned out and I can do it and it's fine. Sometimes I cannot, and I'll just go in a gym and I just kind of walk around. I might pick up and when I start getting like that, I'm like, okay, I need to do something else. So I joined a gym that has classes. I'll just take classes.
Yeah.
Tell me what to do, lay it out there for me. I just I go in cycles, and then I'll get burnt out of that, and I'll go back to doing my own thing, and then I'll go back to classes, or I need that.
I mean, sometimes for me, I'll go to the gym with my wife and I'll just say, hey, I don't know what you're doing, but I'm doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
I just don't want to think about it.
Right.
Yeah.
And sometimes it gets like that.
I feel like that's where I get burnt out most as a coach, is I don't want to write my own workout now. I'm done. Let me just do it. And then my other thing is too, if I wrote the workout, I'm more likely to swap it out mid workout. I'm like, why did I put burpees in this? I don't want to do this. I can get the same thing with a mountain climber, or I'll just do some curls.
It's easy to kind of cheat on yourself
for sure,
way, right?
Yeah.
And I started coaching at a CrossFit gym, and I've been doing the workouts before I coach, and that feeling the stimulus kind of helps me then like coach it better, but I also think it gives another perception of like, oh, look, the coach is also doing this workout, and like I think that helps camaraderie and like trust
Definitely.
amongst membership. So yeah, even coaches need coaches too. So Andrew, what's Andrew like outside of work? What do you do when you're not working for tens?
Yeah, not a whole lot. I mean, I got a
Really
pretty,
selling us.
I got a pretty solid friend group. You know, my wife and I have got a solid friend group. We've got our dog. She's a 3-year-old Australian cattle dog, and so she keeps us pretty busy. We typically go on hikes. We're in Cherokee Park this weekend. Yeah, she needs a lot of exercise. We're hoping, everyone tells us when she turns 3 she'll calm down, so we're waiting for that. And so yeah, she keeps us pretty busy. Yeah, I got a few hobbies. We play cards quite a bit. I got a few project motorcycles I'm working on. I'm just trying to teach myself how to run through that. And I got a good buddy who is a lot of a better mechanic than I am, and so I'm always hitting him up like, hey man, this is what I'm into. Can you help me out? And so yeah, so it's a fun process. You know, I think my brain works very similar to like, you know, getting a new client, going through what they're seeing where they're at, and trying to meet them where they're at, and going through the steps to, you know, find this goal in the distance. And similar there, you know, hey, here's what I need to do with this engine or what have you, and so I got to go through this proper steps. And so yeah, so it's nice. Sometimes it's frustrating, but like anything.
Yeah. And one of our favorite questions to ask our guests is about a soapbox. We've heard that your soapbox is that you have no soapboxes, but we wanna hear at least one from you.
I guess if I have to pick something, it's maybe just my general exhaustion of like coaches on social media. I don't know. I just think it's, you know, I get so exhausted seeing coaches, good coaches, bad coaches, young coaches, old coaches, just kind of rant about the same thing over and over. And you know, I can see both sides to almost every argument, because I think there's a lot of people out there who could benefit from one style of training or even an exercise that might look a little odd. It just really, I think you don't really know where people are unless you're like deep into their programming. And so like, yeah, I see, you know, fitness coaches online just kind of rant and have their soapboxes. I'm like, well, I don't know. I've used that with an athlete in the past or a client in the past, and it worked really well. But
are you saying like they like hammer in on like this is the right way and the only way to do something, and then someone else might say this is the right way and the only way, and they just get stuck in that and kind of get closed-minded on other
people are very dogmatic when it comes to that stuff. It's just like, okay, it might work for somebody at a certain time and then not at a later point. Yeah, I think people just want to pick and choose kind of training philosophies or modalities to harp on. But you just never really know. It could work for somebody.
My frustration is that there's just so much out there. Like, and I think just being in it here, like this is my job, is to run social media for the gym, that at home, like, I don't want to do any more of it, you know? So I'm kind of exhausted, and I think people are feeling that too. Like, they're exhausted by the amount of information they're getting at all times.
Yeah, there's folks I follow who I really agree with 90% of what they say, and then they'll say something I'm just like, oh, I don't know about that.
I think it's hard too, because like we're in the industry, we've studied it, so like we can weed out what is dumb and what's like legitimate, and like people that don't have any of that background or don't know, and they just find one person and just like stick with that, and you're like, well, that doesn't even make sense.
Yeah, it definitely gets tough when people ask me, who should I follow? I'm like, well, here's a couple of people.
Right.
You know, but do your own research. Make sure it makes sense for you.
Yeah, maybe that's a good suggestion of like find one or two people so that you're not like just following one thing religiously.
It's even the same as like those what I eat in a day things that have really taken off. Like, you can eat exactly what someone else eats in a day. You're not going to look like them. Like, you can do the same exact workouts and they're not going to benefit you. And that might not even be what that person's doing. You don't know what happens off camera.
Yeah.
Like, you don't know what they're doing.
And I think that's still the benefit of like working with a coach and having someone get to know you, and that in-person connection.
Yeah. Not everyone's starting from the same place.
True.
I mean, you can have a marathon runner and you suggest 10,000 steps a day to them, it's going to be laughable.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So it's like, oh, maybe you should shoot for 4,000 because this person has never, done it. They're just super sedentary and they're a little overweight and they don't really walk. And it's like, oh, shoot for a few thousand if what you've been getting is 2. Maybe shoot for 3 or 4. And so there's so many different people are at so many different places in their life and their fitness journey. And so I think that's important kind of to back up what you said is, you got to find somebody who is going to meet you where you are and go from there.
And tailor it to what you need. Kind of along those same lines, something we like to end the podcast on is for those that are listening and want to get started but don't know how, we always like to ask the coach, like, what is your advice?
Yeah, I mean, really, if you can find an actual coach or trainer to get you going, I think that's a really awesome place to start. If you can't, if you work from home or if there's nothing available in your area, there's lots of online options. There's lots of online programming that's really good. But again, you got to do your research to find the coach that's going to actually take into account, like, where you are and where you're starting. Too often it's just, hey, I wrote 3 programs for 3 different styles of training I'm going to give to everybody no matter what. And so, so it really just depends. I think if you're really, set and motivated to get going, I would find a gym that either has classes that you can kind of get a community or find that coach that'll hold you accountable. Those are huge. I mean, I've ebbed and flowed over my personal, exercise life that, when I've had training partners, I'm just much better.
Oh, yeah.
I am so much better with a training partner or partners in the gym. They can push you, they can help you, they keep you accountable. I can easily, right now, I'm not training with anyone. I can easily I was going to go, but now I'm deciding not to. And the only person that gets to make that decision is me.
Yeah. I also think people super starting out, if you just you're I'm just going to go to the gym. If you've never been in a gym, you've never done weights, you never whatever, I just see people immediately just get on the treadmill and that's all they do, which is, I mean, if you're doing nothing, that's great.
Yeah,
but if you want to get into weights and stuff like that, that is intimidating to just take on your own, maybe watch a YouTube video or whatever. So I do classes too, especially just to start getting you acquainted with some of the movements, maybe have someone, there's always a coach that can correct your form if you're doing something horribly wrong, and start with that and build a little bit more confidence in the weights and not just stick with just treadmill.
Yeah, I've had clients in the past, they won't go to the gym unless they're meeting me. And then a few months later, they're like, hey, I went to the gym on Saturday by myself. It's
yeah.
Sweet, what'd you do?
Yeah.
And they'll start rattling off all the exercises we typically do. I'm like, all right, well, we're going to change your session today, but I'm super proud of you for going on your own. Let's go ahead and program you a solo day. And then it blossoms from there. I think
even if
that confidence is huge.
Just meeting with a coach, even if you sign up for one session a week or whatever and go and kind of get movements down and then do one other, time by yourself and
100%.
Start building that confidence.
I've had clients come to me like, hey, I just want to do once a month. And then, a few weeks later, they're like, actually, you know what? I haven't really had a good workout since I met with you. Let's try twice a month. And it's like, okay, I see him every week now.
Yeah.
And so I think that, that community or the accountability kind of those to me really go hand in hand, are super powerful. If you're not really sure where to start, you got to get other people around you.
Yeah. And I think consistency, you've mentioned that several times in the podcast. I think you'd shared this with Amy and I last week of giving yourself that non-negotiable, your technique of having the 2 consecutive days that you can't miss. I really liked that. Yeah,
it's not something I've followed in the past probably 4 months or maybe longer. But for a while it was, I just made up a rule for myself, and it was, I can't miss more than one day, right? And so if I didn't train on Tuesday, I had to train on Wednesday. And so I can take a Saturday off, but I better train on Friday and Sunday.
Yeah.
And so I did that for a while, and it bred that consistency where, again, you can look back and say, okay, well, I've been putting in the work, I've been putting in the effort, the results and the progress will follow. And so I think a lot of folks get stuck in that hamster wheel. It's like, well, I've been doing something once or twice a week. It's like, well, is it enough? Are we doing enough?
And a lot of our fitness goals are so subjective, right? They'll be like, how my stomach doesn't look like it's any smaller. But if you can focus on the factual, well, you've showed up 5 out of the 7 days, it gives you something
it's gonna
objective to focus on. Yeah.
Trust the process.
Yeah.
It'll happen. So many people give up after, I did 3 crunches. Why don't I have abs? I'm never doing this again. You got to give it time and trust the process. And if you stick with it, the math is mathing. You'll start to see the result.
Yeah. And if you want to coach, we have Andrew at Well at Humana, and he's always looking for clients as well as his team. Thanks, Andrew, for joining us today.
Definitely.
We will definitely be having you back. Our next episode is going to be with Coach Tracy up in Green Bay, Wisconsin, bringing a cheesehead to the podcast. Thanks again for listening, and we will see you next time.
Bye, y'all.
Bye.